Martin Brooks, Chair of the committee. This is what is termed a quasi-judicial meeting, which means that members sit not as ward councillors, but as representatives of the council as a whole. No decisions have been made by members before this meeting, and only members who have completed the mandatory training are able to vote. And I confirm that all members present have completed that mandatory training. We've got people here who've stated that they wish to speak on a particular planning application. We deal with those applications on an area basis, and I'll introduce those people at the relevant time. And just to remind you that if you're making contributions, your contributions need to be limited to 3 minutes. Can I also remind everyone present to switch off your mobile phones and remind councillors that you don't enjoy parliamentary privilege, so please be aware of that when speaking. So we're moving on to item 1 of the agenda, which is to advise the meeting that this meeting is being filmed and live streamed on the web. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Just in respect of item 6, just for the public record, I do have a relative that lives on Blakeland Road, but they're not in the immediate vicinity of the application, and I have not discussed it with them.
Thank you for that. Any others, Councillor Marsham?
Yeah, item 10 falls onto my board as an impact.
Thank you for that. Any other declarations of interest? Item 3, apologies. Any apologies? Councillor Payne. Yep. Any other apologies? Chair's announcements. I don't have any. Item 5 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of January. Is it agreed that I sign them as a correct record of that meeting? Thank you. So, item 6, planning applications in respect of the northwest area. So the first one is report 6 in relation to 64 Blakeland Road. Before I invite members of the public to speak on this application, can I ask for an update from the relevant officer?
Thanks, Chair. No updates to report on this.
Okay, I understand that for this item we've got Fahim Lee, who wishes to speak as an objector. Would you like to come to the table in front?
Thank you.
Are you ready? Okay, so you've got 3 minutes.
Okay. Right, the letters were only received on the 9th of December at my house, and at number 62, they received it on the 12th, which only gave us 5 days to raise objections. The homes adjacent to 64 did not, nor have received this letter so far. Covenants on Blakeland Road homes prevent them from being used as businesses, as it was written into the deeds. The council has a long-standing agreement which limits Class 2 buildings to detached properties. It's an agreement that Councillor Payne has written into his objections. Police have also been objected. There's a HMO for young offenders at the bottom of the road on Elmbridge. There's also a HMO for battered women on Blakeland Road, where police have attend regularly. Current occupiers have now settled in since 2018. Their young daughters now attends a local school. By converting this to a care home, they will have to relocate and possibly have to relocate the daughter to a different school. Access to the rear of the property can only be done via the front and side of the building. This is not wide enough if you're going to bring bins through, bikes through, as on the planning permission. Access to the rear, there's a 15-foot drop from the fence to the ground level. So there's with no gate access, because obviously my back of my property is next to theirs. Finally, this is the financial bits. Current average rent is 650 for a calendar month, so the revenue is 7,800 per annum. Changing the property to childcare, I have been advised revenues per average is £500 per child per a week. 2 children equates to a revenue of £52,000, which basically brings me back to the covenant, which means that this is definitely being used as a business, which contravenes the covenant. All of which the planning department have chosen to ignore by approving this planning application. And obviously in light of, we've had the support of Councillor Payne as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I invite Kadir Nawaz, the applicant for this, please.
Thank you very much. So the proposed children's home, Blakeland House, will be operated by Laurel Care, which is with the sole purpose to provide care and accommodation to children within residential homes. Myself, I'm a qualified independent prescribing pharmacist with 6 years of experience working with children. I started my career as a community pharmacist and my most recent role as a service manager at HMP Huel and as well as HMP Brinsford, where I've been responsible for compliance, training, policy writing, and providing both clinical and operational supervision. We have a strong team of a registered manager and a responsible individual who are registered with Ofsted with over 15 years experience working in children's residential care and being able to deliver in all aspects of children's residential services. The senior management team are firm believers in the highest quality of service delivery within children's home to achieving outstanding outcomes for young people. All members of staff are extremely passionate about their specialised expertise and will never compromise in meeting the needs of young people. The home itself will provide high staffing ratios to meet the needs of the children living there. Rotors are designed to have the same members of staff working within children throughout the day. We will have a maximum of 2 children in the home at any one time. The children will generally be supported on a 1-to-1 basis, even potentially on a 2-to-1 basis. Shift changeovers will happen at 7:30 every day, and 1 member of staff will support the children during the night. Blakeland House will be registered with Ofsted to provide care and accommodation to children with behavioural and emotional difficulties. These children may be involved with or risk of child sexual exploitation. They will either experience neglect, separation, loss, abuse, or trauma.
1 minute left.
We have highly qualified and experienced staff to meet the needs of our children. Our staff will receive training as well as continuing professional development. Unfortunately, there is an unjustified stigma associated with children's homes as an attraction for antisocial and criminal behaviour, which mainly stems from a lack of understanding of such an environment. Children's homes are mistakenly perceived synonymously to supported accommodation and exempt housing. However, unlike these settings, children's homes are subject to stringent registration processes with the regulator Ofsted. The registration process includes determining the fitness to practice of a provider and the registered persons. We have chosen 64 Blakeland for the purpose of a children's residential home, as this location provides ample and convenient access to local amenities as well as local transport. It is located in a fantastic catchment area with great access to good education and health facilities, which makes this location ideal for the intended purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. Can I, before I invite members to comment, can I bring the area planning manager back, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you to our speakers this morning. A lot of the points raised are contained within the officer report, but there are a few issues raised with the public speaking I think it would be beneficial to just cover now. So just starting with the concern about consultation and the neighbours' letters going out. So in accordance with the adopted statement of community involvement, adjoining neighbours were consulted. A site notice was also posted. And as you can see, a significant number of representation has been received on this application. On the matter of the covenant, this is a non-planning matter, so you cannot consider whether there's a covenant on the property or not. In terms of the issue of it being a semi-detached property, correct in saying that policy advises that detached properties are more suitable, but it doesn't rule out the use of semi-detached properties, and it's important to consider semi-detached properties and the impact of those semi-detached properties, the use of those semi-detached properties would have on neighbour amenity. That has been considered within the officer's report in front of you, and we are content. And you will note as well that there is a condition relating to internal noise insulation matters on the party wall, shared wall. The police, have raised some concerns specifically in relation to the nature of the application may see an increase in missing people or absent reports, and this ultimately would have an impact on police resources. But I think it's important to recognise here this is very much this relates not to a land use issue, which planning is relevant to, but it's more about how a particular site is managed and operated, and that is very much controlled by regulations covered by Ofsted. On the matter of HMOs within the officer's report, identifies the assessment that we've done. This, so looking at the 100-metre radius, which members will be aware that we use a 100-metre radius, we identified 2 HMOs within the location, within that radius, which represents 1.79%, none of which are adjacent to this particular property. It's also important to note that the children's care home is not a HMO. And I think probably the final matter, the arrangement of the house compared to the care home would be as existing. So the existing arrangement, which is suitable for family accommodation, would remain as it is at the moment. In terms of the arrangement, getting access to the rear garden, for example, would remain the same for the proposed care home. And finally, on the matter of rent that could be generated from the property, again, that is a non-planning matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now throw it over to members for questions or comments. Councillor Deakin.
Thank you, Chair. I've considered some of the comments and some of the objections, and I don't really recognise how children's homes supporting at-risk and vulnerable young people could cause any further issues than if these young people were in alternative provision. I also don't see how some of the objections talk about issues around the use of a family home and antisocial behaviour, but actually if these children were committing antisocial behaviour elsewhere, they would have no other means to raise those issues other than avenues that are already available. I also find that the West Midlands police comments are perhaps a bit ill-considered and made without effort. And again, just because they're not in this provision, it doesn't mean these children cease existing either, and they may still be able to do the very things that objectives have made. Therefore, we'll be supporting the application because it's much needed provision in the system.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I do have concerns about this because, yes, there is a need for children's homes in the city, but it's the suitability of semi-detached properties. Burlington have a number of children's homes, which I'm aware of. Ones where complaints come from are terraced and semi-detached properties because of the impact on adjoining neighbours, the increased noise and disturbance that sadly do occur sometimes with these properties. The ones where we don't have complaints are where they're detached because the disruption is much more minimal, and that's why I think we should certainly be looking for more detached properties for these uses to exist, so that they can coexist harmoniously, or at least as much as possible, with the existing community around it, which is the whole purpose of this residential, this care residential use. I also have concerns in relation to the highways issue. As I mentioned, I've got a relative on the road, so I do visit Blakeland Road on a frequent basis. Parking is horrendous. It's very, very difficult to get up and down the road. A lot of residents sometimes have to park in the Golden Hind car park at the top because it's the only way to park, because the parking is such an issue, as aptly demonstrated in the photo with the car parked on the grass verge. So I appreciate the idea is that there's going to be an additional space because they're going to remove the garden. But yes, we've got staff here. It's a one-to-one basis, but presumably there'll be visitors, there'll be social workers, there'll be other people coming to visit the property, and there won't be the space for them. And as I mentioned, Blakeland Road is heavily congested already with parking. So I do think that there is a highway aspect to this, which I'm very concerned about.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
Thank you. Yes, like it's raised so this is a semi-detached property. Council guidelines are that they should be detached, and this is a frequent breach that this committee has to consider. There are reasons why that rule was put into place, and this committee should uphold the standards that behind those reasons.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to speak in favour of this. As Councillor Moore said, we do need these sort of properties. If this was on the open market and sold tomorrow, it's a family home. It could be a family of 6 children moving. That would create noise. My personal view is that some of the objections are a bit sort of a bit NIMBY, not in my backyard, and I don't think they stand up to, to scrutiny. I think that, in my personal opinion, I don't believe we've already voted in various committees. We've already voted for similar sort of homes. How long have these children got to wait before they find a family home? It is actually going to be their home. So I'm afraid I have to vote for it.
Thank you. Councillor Harman.
Thank you, Chair. I am of the view that the police provider has engaged with Birmingham Children's Trust from an early stage to identify the needs. And as the officer has mentioned, the council believes point that they should be detached. These are only guidelines. It's not set in stone as such, so that a semi-detached house cannot be registered as a children's home. And they have in the reports mentioned that Ofsted registration will be of the utmost importance. So bearing in mind all these points, I will be supporting the application, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Marshall. Oh, sorry. Councillor Donaldson first.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. I'd like more clarification on the noise insulation. What are the specifications? Is there a minimum specification for noise insulation? Because it's vague.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, I grew up pretty much around the corner, so I know the area very well. I just want to echo Councillor Deacon's comments about police objection or concerns. I think I'll call it peculiar, their wording, but unusual from them. I'm just a little bit surprised what they said. To me, this is a much needed children's care home, and as a city, we have a responsibility to house those we need to help. And the Birmingham Children's Trust have full confidence in the provider, so I see no reason for us not to approve this application.
Thank you. Anyone else before I bring the area planning manager?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. Just starting with the issue with the noise insulation, we haven't got those details in front of us, so they're covered by condition. I mean, there's a variety of products out there which we'll be looking to, which in reality would be like noise insulation fixed to the back of plasterboard, for example, which would be applied to the internal wall, which would sort of help reduce any noise travelling from one property to the other with that shared wall. But ultimately, that is covered by condition, and we would consult with our technical advisors in regulatory services that what's being proposed is suitable for the nature of this scheme, which is ultimately relatively small scale, with a maximum of 2 children. Now, there's been quite a lot of discussion about the suitability of the semi-detached property, and whilst the discussion's been going on, I've brought up the relevant paragraph in the Development Management in Birmingham, DPD, and I thought I'd just read the words out just so it's very clear. So under paragraph 4.31, it says specialist accommodation, which is what this what this proposal would fall within, is normally most appropriately located in large detached properties set in their own grounds. The development of such uses in smaller detached or large semi-detached or terrace houses will not be acceptable unless the amenity of adjoining occupiers can be safeguarded. officers have considered the impact. Officers have considered the amenity of the joining occupiers. It is a relatively small scale children's care home. Comings and goings probably would not be too dissimilar to it being occupied by a family. So on that grounds, there is no objection in principle to use of a semi-detached property. Members will also be aware that we have been comfortable in approving a number of these children's care homes in semi-detached properties, again with a condition with noise insulation to the party wall over recent months. Just finally on the issue of the parking, so the scheme is small scale. Details on the number of staff comings and goings are relatively modest and not too dissimilar to that of a family house. So we certainly feel comfortable that actually, if the proposal was to go ahead, the impact on highway safety wouldn't be of a sufficient level to justify reasonable refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, there's been a very extensive discussion on that. I'm going to put it to the vote now. Can I see all those in favour of the recommendations in paragraph 8?
8, Chair.
8 in favour. Any against? Any abstentions? That the recommendation is approved subject to the conditions listed in paragraph 8. Thank you. We move on to item 7, which is land off Austin Way.
Thank you, Chair. No updates on this item.
Okay, any comments from members? Councillor Marsham.
Perry Bar is undergoing significant regeneration as part of hosting the Commonwealth Games last year, and bringing this land back into employment is an important part of that regeneration. So I welcome it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Can I therefore put the recommendations in paragraph 8 to the committee? All those in favour?
11.
I think that's unanimous.
Yeah.
Okay, that's approved unanimously. Thank you. So on to item 8. Just give the officers time to adjust the positions. Okay, we're on to item 8, Summerhill House. Any updates?
Yes, a couple of updates. Thank you, Chair. So firstly, we've had a further response from the lead local flood authority, which states that they appreciate the application is a refurbishment and a redevelopment application, and they support the comments made by Trent Water around the fact that they require the existing surface water flows to be reduced and a CCTV proof of an existing surface water connection, and therefore, and that would be subject to Severn Trent's approval, and therefore they remain with their holding objection until that is confirmed. Just to speak to that point, actually, we have conditions around that, and that update doesn't change the recommendation before you from an officer's perspective. Ultimately, the design of the drainage scheme can come through the condition, and the application is largely around the reuse of an existing building. So there's only so many ways you can arrange that, and the size of the pipes and the size of any attenuation tank would be determined through that condition. The second update is we've had a further response from Regulatory Services. They've confirmed that they're happy with the updated air quality assessment. But they've also reiterated their objections in terms of noise and the impact on Curry and Warner, and that they consider that if the scheme is permitted with openable windows on the facades that are adversely affected by the commercial noise, and should any complaints be received and nuisance substantiated, then they would be required to take action against Curry and Warner. And in their view, it's not an acceptable outcome in respect of this scheme, and therefore continue to recommend refusal. It's worth noting that officers have asked regulatory services whether there have been any complaints about the noise of that existing industrial use to date, and they've confirmed that there have not been. Although, and there are existing residential properties in this area, although this would bring that use slightly closer. And then also, notwithstanding their objection, regulatory services have reviewed the draft conditions and they are happy with them. The only tweak that they've requested is to condition 24, which controls delivery hours, which they're recommending is changed to deliveries to take place between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. Monday to Saturdays and 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sundays, which officers consider justified. So that is recommended to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members? Councillor Marsham.
I think this is a well-designed scheme with its townhouses and gardens, which will hopefully bring more families to live in the Drury Quarter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I also welcome this application in terms of its restoration and ensuring the future of these two lovely buildings. They make a great contribution to Drury Quarter, so it's great to see that will continue. However, I do have a concern in relation to the noise impact from the adjoining business. Now, in a rational world, people would be aware that they're moving next to a noise-sensitive location, but sadly, there are morons who seem to think that if they move next to one that's suddenly a noise-sensitive location, that suddenly there is noise, and we need to factor that in because it's not fair that existing business should be penalised because of such morons. Which does happen elsewhere in the city, and I'm particularly concerned. We've seen businesses move out of the Drury Quarter, move out of the city centre. A lot of them move out of the city, and it would be a shame if this business would be forced to leave the Drury Quarter, where I don't know how long it's been there, but it's considerable time, I presume, because some idiots next door decided they didn't like the noise. So I am concerned, given regulatory services objected, whether the noise mitigation is suitable, and would suggest that perhaps some sort of informative is placed on it to remind or inform residents who move into this when it's complete that they are next to a noise-sensitive location and not to be a moron.
Any other questions or comments? Sorry, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I'm particularly impressed with the reuse of an existing building, the removal of some extensions that are not entirely in keeping and the extension of that. I am also concerned about the noise. I've heard many complaints from many locations, people moving in next to a noisy building and then complaining that there's noise. And I'd like further reassurance that this is not going to be a problem.
Okay, yep. So talking to the noise issue, so to go through that in a little bit more detail. Firstly, the strategy is that on the boundary of Curry and Warner, there is an office or commercial use building proposed to offer a physical screen which blocks most of those rear windows, to be honest. The noise source is actually to the north of the Curry and Warner building. They've got this big hopper, and it's well known to officers from various applications around here. So we do understand it very well. So there are relatively few windows that will have direct line of sight anyway, because there are buildings in the way. Also, there are conditions around the glazing spec, an overheating assessment, so residents can close their windows and have a satisfactory environment with them closed from those relatively few that are impacted. I think the other thing to bear in mind is obviously the 5-year housing land supply issue, in fact that we're in tilted balance. So just to remind members what that means. So where the relevant plan, which is our Birmingham Development Plan, is out of date, which it is in terms of our housing need, the test is that the permission should be granted unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when weighed against the wider policies of the NPPF. In our view, the potential of those noise impacts do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the development before you. But saying all that, I'm not averse to an informative at all. I don't think I put the word moron in there, but but I'm sure we could draw attention to the fact that Curry and Warner are a neighbour for those few residents. I think that's entirely reasonable.
Okay, that's very helpful, actually. I think that's an important point that's been well made by members. That being the case, can I put the recommendations to you that are in paragraph 9 with the 36 conditions. All those in favour? 11 votes, and that is unanimous decision in favour of approval. Thank you. We're going to move to the east area now. I will just hang on a moment till the officer gets in place. So we're on to item 9, which relates to Erdington Industrial Park. I'll bring the area planning manager into any updates.
No updates, thank you, Chair.
Fine. Any questions or comments from members? You're happy for me to put the recommendations straight to committee? They're in paragraph 9 of the report. All those in favour?
11 against.
11 votes in favour and no votes against. That is unanimously approved, subject to the conditions listed. Thank you. We move to the last report, which is land at the former Heartlands Park, etc., Washwood Heath Depot. Just hang on a moment again for the officer to get in place. Okay. Any updates for members?
No updates, Chair. Thank you.
Can I therefore throw it open for discussion? Councillor Marsham.
HS2 will improve our rail network, make it greener and bring economic growth to our city. I think the depot designs a nod to our industrial past, and obviously it will create 550 jobs at the old LDV and Alston site, an area of Birmingham which needs more opportunities. If I may, as an aside, the government needs to build HS2 in full as promised on many occasions.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Very supportive of the application. HS2 is a massive asset to the city, and I'm confident it will be delivered despite Councillor Marsham's concerns. But it's not very often I agree with Liam Byrne, but on this occasion I do, particularly around his comments in terms of some of the design aspects around the wall and fence, and it is a shame that more work couldn't be done to improve that visual look. Not that there's much you can do with a wall and fence, but I do have concerns given the scale of the site and the impact it will have for those who have to look upon it day in, day out. I can imagine it's not the most appealing, but it is a massive piece of infrastructure for the city and the country, and therefore the benefits it offers definitely outweigh those issues.
Donaldson?
Yeah, just reference to 5.2, paragraph 5.2, Commissioner Bloomberg. Any update on the skill package, the land handback and the design aspect?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And I'll bring you back on those points.
Absolutely. Thank you. So with regard to design, has been addressed in the report. We are limited in what we can consider under Schedule 17 of the HS2 Act. The fence itself, we can only look at its location. Its design under the Act, so a refusal on those grounds isn't acceptable. I have suggested an informative, which asks HS2 to consider their art strategy, which is another part of the whole process. And the land to the south of the depot will come forward as a landscape strip. So I think there's an opportunity within that to consider the art strategy, how we can mitigate fences as best we can in terms of that setting and in terms of the bringing into use submission, which is the next stage of the process. We have looked some detail at the wall to the side as a comparable, just to get your head around the scale. I did a bit of an exercise of measuring how far away that wall is in relation to where anyone will perceive it. If you go to Millennium Point, which is a similar height building, and you were to stand on the other side of the park on the footpath, you would be a similar distance as you would be from this building to park that you would stand on. So how you perceive that building is how you would perceive this, albeit there would be fence next to you at that point. So that blank facade at that point would be relatively that distance away. We looked at whether you could potentially put windows in that side elevation to animate it at all. I feel that actually the distance is such that probably you wouldn't really perceive that anyway, with the landscaping and everything else intermittent to it. So I think that's sort of where we've got to with regards to design. With regards to the skills package and land handback, we have undertakings and assurances, which are a separate process to Schedule 17. So under Schedule 17, we cannot consider those impacts, but there are separate conversations occurring in relation to that. There is an employment package that the council was involved in that, in progressing that. There's a skills academy, and when HS2 went out to the community, certainly they were explaining how you get on the jobs board, where the package is with regards to employment and everything else going forward. So that work is happening. Land handback, clearly you can't hand the land back until such time as the construction has been completed, but those discussions are again happening in the background as work progresses on site.
Okay, thank you for those helpful responses. Can I put the recommendation in paragraph 9 to members? All those in favour? 11. No votes against. That is unanimously carried that we agree the recommendations in paragraph 9. Thank you very much. Any other urgent business? There being none, can I move the necessary authority to chair and officers to act between meetings? Thank you very much.